Hi there, this is Helen Tarrant again from here with our whole team. Wow, it's massive. Welcome to another episode of Commercial Property Roadshow. You're here with Helen Tarrant, and today I'm actually going to talk about compliance and issues that you're going to run into, those pitfalls and mistakes. So this is part 3 of it. If you haven't heard, and this is your first video with me, go back and watch the one that was posted on Tuesday and the one after that, and it's going to be about all the pitfalls. So we've done 3 pitfalls. This is the 3rd one. The first one is on actual set and forget properties, the kind of pitfalls you could run into. The second one is on uplift properties, what you can run into. Number 3, this one here, I'm going to talk about compliance issues, because that's one of the things that no matter what kind of property you get in commercial property or residential, you are going to run into some of these issues, right? So that's why we're going to talk about it today, right? And also, one of the other things we will cover off today is that, you know, my YouTube video now has been running for a long time, so hopefully you've subscribed and hit the bell. Going forward, we're now going to go into weekly episodes rather than twice a week, so weekly episodes, and I'm going to bring you some different things. I'm going to interview some people around in the industry. We are going to be interviewing people who have stories around commercial property, and really sort of getting you to think that, you know, bigger and broader, there's a bigger community out there as well. But also, one of the most important things going forward is I want you to check out, you know, one of our live events, one of our boot camps, or one of our webinars, and really come and join us, find out more information on commercial property. On that front, let's launch into it. Now, number 3, the 3 things, right? Well, we looked at, you know, different things about rents. We looked at, you know, compliance. We looked at, you know, capital costs. So now, compliance. One of the first things is asbestos, right? Asbestos is basically, this is your issue, right? Now, not all asbestos is a deal breakers, right? So not all asbestos are deal breakers, right? Asbestos compliant and management register need to be on the premise of the property you are buying if it has asbestos in there. If it doesn't have asbestos in there, then you just get a report that says no asbestos. You keep that handy, that's it. But if you do have asbestos, the report needs to be updated every 5 years, and you need to have a report right at the beginning to pinpoint where the asbestos is, and there's a management register, right? It is the vendor's responsibility, or you, as you become the purchaser and become the vendor in the future, responsibility to do that. It is not for you as the purchaser to get it, but sometimes it may be faster for you to get it because the vendor is not realizing they need to get it, because typically they've owned the property for 10, 20, or even 5 years when they didn't need to get it, and now they're really cracking down on it. But you have to have asbestos, and sometimes the bank is even asking for asbestos registers. So it's really, really important to have asbestos registers and have that compliance. Now, you can choose to remove the asbestos, or you can choose to leave it in there. But if you choose to leave the asbestos in there, totally fine, as long as your tenants are aware of it, they're not doing major renovations, you're not punching a hole into it, it's all good. As long as also you got to remember that when you do go and do renovations on this property, that you have adequate and the right kind of people going there to remove the asbestos. That's all you need, right? We had some asbestos removed in one of our developments down in Albury, $100,000 worth of stuff. So we really do know our asbestos stuff, and we do see it. Look, it's not a deal breaker. A lot of older buildings in Queensland do have it. So just be aware that, you know, where it is. And most of the time it's in the electrical boards, it's around the kitchen area, and sometimes it's, you know, in the ceilings. Most of the time ceilings and awnings, right? And look, if you're not really doing anything to it, it's not going to matter. But, you know, depending on the type of asbestos, you know, if you do have a hurricane or a hailstorm, it can actually make it worse, right? So there's always pros and cons of it, and how to deal with it is on basis, right? So that's what it is. Now, the other thing to look at is your compliance in terms of zoning compliance, right? A lot of people don't realize this when they buy warehouse properties, that zoning compliance to deal with warehouse properties can be huge. So what does that mean? That means that when you're doing, you got a warehouse and it's 80-20, so 80% warehouse and 20% office. If you put more office space there, you become non-compliant. And when you're non-compliant, you have to ask for change of use with the council. Sometimes the council says, yes, sure, you get change of use. There's no issues with that. Sometimes the council says, no, go away, no change of use, off you go, kind of thing. right? But the thing is that you really have to be aware of what the council is going to say, because if say no change of use and you've got tenants in there that is non-compliant, then you risk them kicking them out, right? And maybe making a compliance cost you an extra $20,000 or $30,000. So you've got to do that during due diligence, look at the zoning and whether you comply with the zoning. Sometimes you get a tenant in there and they haven't done the change of use. That's something you have to make sure they do, right? So you need to find those things out. So that zoning is really important, but also important if you want to continue in the future to actually go and do when you go up later on to if you want to do development, you want to do some changes, you want to find that out. But remember, these things are found out during due diligence, not before due diligence, because if you do it before due diligence and before you get into contract in certain states, especially in Queensland, you're basically wasting everyone else's time and the property's going to be sold before you know it. So get that, right? And then we've got, so that's sorted. The other thing important is electricals and plumbing, right? Sometimes electrical boards needs to be upgraded. So they need to be, and you need to check them as inspections. When we do inspections, site inspections, we check those things. And that's really, really important, because if you need to rewire something, and I've just had something to be rewired, it can cost you tens of thousands of dollars, right? Not a $2,000 or $3,000 thing, tens of thousands of dollars, right? So, and sometimes you need to split electricity and water because you have dual tenancy. You need to find out how you can do that. And again, there's something you find out during DD. So that's what you're going to do, right? Plumbing. Depending on the property itself, dentists obviously already have their plumbing installed, hairdressers of course, but if you're doing a change of use or you're thinking of the versatility of the property, you got to look at how does that plumbing affect it, right? Can you go from a cafe restaurant to a hairdresser to a dentist later on? What are some of the points? Is it doable? Is it something that you really can afford to do for the tenant? Or is it something that, it's part and parcel what the tenant is going to do? But is it even feasible in your property, or is it going to cost you an extra $10,000, $20,000, $30,000? Because of course, with enough money and enthusiasm and time, you can do almost anything. But the thing is, you don't have such deep pockets. You might not have deep pockets, and it may not be worth you to change a $500,000 property and spend $50,000 on putting all this new plumbing, right? So that is the important thing, right? Of course, electricals, make sure everything's compliant, the wires, doesn't create fire hazards is one of the things that insurances look at. So that's very important as well. Then, of course, we have fire compliance. Now, fire compliance leads directly to insurance. So if you underinsure, you have a fire hazard, then that is probably going to create an issue, right? So what does that mean? It means that if you have like a tattoo shop, someone with a deep fryer, so a fish and chip shop, a tire shop, those things are going to spike your insurance, right? There may not be fire hazards, all of them, like a deep fryer is definitely fire hazard, and if you're next door to it, sometimes you even pay higher insurance. Tire shop definitely is, and of course you've got the tattoo parlor because of skin penetration, using equipment, and that is additional risk, right? It's skin piercing. So those are to do with spiking up the insurance, but of course coming back down to the fire hazard to tenants, and also there's lots of other tenants that could be hazardous. So if they do resin, so surfboard people, we've got a tenant with surfboard, so we know resin, or if they do things like car parts and mechanic parts, some of the ways they have spray booth, they can have flammable materials, which is again fire hazard, right? You got to know that fire compliant for the building, whether that needs to be sprinklers in there, you have all your fire blankets, all of that needs to be treated, needs to be done properly. So if you're taking over an old building, you're not sure, the next step for you is really like just getting someone out there, like a FireWise person, to like a company, they'll go out there and they'll check for fire compliance of that property, and they'll give you a report and you can go along and fix that, or get the vendor to fix that, right? Because it's really, really important, because if you have fire in your building and you're not adequately insured for it, in terms of that you created it because you underinsured, or you didn't disclose it, or for whatever reason you didn't make it fire compliant, then the insurance is not going to pay out and you have a huge loss. So it's really important. So fire is number one importance, and we always check in terms of compliance. And of course, then anything to do with councils and there's particularities around different types of tenants as well. So those are the flow-on effects. Lots and lots of things and lots of pitfalls. But these are the things to mainly check for, but mainly that when you become a landlord, even if the previous landlord didn't have it, previous landlord didn't have it, when you become a landlord, make sure you have it, right? And that's really important. That's what we specify for our clients, that they have these things in place, even though it might be more costly, and you might find that the yield is a little bit less, and that that you might take a hit on 0.25% on your yield. Ultimately, what you want to be is you want to get to a point where you know you can sleep at night, everything is properly done, and that if something did happen, the insurance is absolutely going to pay you out and you're absolutely secure. And also the safety of your tenant is really, really important. So hopefully on that note, that completes our part 3. I look forward to seeing you next week, where we go to 1 episode a week. We are going to be doing that 1 episode a week during midweek. So we'll be doing that on a Wednesday. And then that means that you'll get to see it uploaded every Wednesday as well going forward. So tune in, hit the bell, subscribe, send us links to send this video and every other video to lots and lots of your friends. Look out for my book, Cashed Up with Commercial Property, link below to order, and I will see you in the next video. Bye for now.